Okay. Yeah, you can. Do you have to? Yes.
Yeah. It's a safe. It was. No, yeah, our authorities decided, you know, accepting.
It's you mean 9:30? Yeah. The plenary is at 9:30.
Yeah, you try to learn your current system.
Okay.
Because you can broke your brain.
Then maybe it's best if you go first. You want to hear? Right. All right.
The best countries are the same. We don't have our mind.
All right. Somebody who signed up. If you register online, I sent it around yesterday.
Yeah, it was funny. We were also doing that to
We were always.
What?
From the
Be Live created that someone was emailing. Who? Oh, this guy. It's controversial. It's the guy who went to Cyprus. He went to my country. Talking about the birds. Maybe I meant the extinction rebellion guy. Okay, that's what the British name on like.
There's only one.
Michael Scott.
Can you leave?
Do you know what he's talking?
He's my student.
Okay, cool. It's the guy from The Office.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Ages too. Yeah, I camped actually in the resistance camp. There, Franklin Woods.
But
Registered 2 years ago.
No way. I started in Warwick actually. So that's the area.
physiological. Well, I'm surprised you didn't.
She was there.
It's a bit.
Yeah. Exactly.
We're kind of hesitant presidents.
There's no complaint on it.
And yeah, in 2 minutes. You know, it's just like like that's his
And the person who's
like, oh no, I'm running up.
of course, yeah, we're not gonna find it very easy. This other person who had this piercing here. Oh, DJ from Glasgow.
Yeah, I know.
Swedish. See that?
Well, hello everyone. Good morning. I think we should get started. I suppose the online participants will trickle in. Thank you, Esther, for letting everyone in online. So my name is Margarida. I work for the European Environmental Bureau. I hope you can all hear me well online, and I would ask our speakers then also to project their voices so they can be well heard. This is an event on environmental defenders. We just as a point on the agenda, we have multiple environmental defenders and your representatives who will give testimonies on the situation for environmental defenders in their respective countries. And then we are joined by the Special Rapporteur on Environmental Defenders, Lisa Cost. And the point of this event is to sort of raise awareness and explain the importance of the rapid response mechanism under the Aarhus Convention, and also highlight the situation of environmental defenders across the parties of the Aarhus Convention, and learn from each other and listen to each other, which is very valuable. I would then give the floor very shortly to all of our speakers. First of all, I just wanted to tell you, thank you very much for being here, for making the time, and the commitment, and also the emotional labor of being here, telling us your stories. And we are very grateful for that. We would also like to share with everyone a project we have been working on with many of the people here present, called the Be Life Project, which stands for Better Enforcement, which has been running for a couple of years, and we have developed some tools to hopefully help members of the public, NGOs, individuals, environmental defenders, to know what their rights are at the EU and international level. So we present different mechanisms of redress that can be available to members of the public, and then we explain with an interactive online tool, the Be Life portal that will be shared online, and then later in the follow-up communication, we walk you through what your situation is, and based on that, we ask multiple questions, and as you answer, then it gives you a potential avenue of redress for the issue you are facing that relates to the environment. But more on that later. Now I would go to our speakers that will talk to us about trends and worries about the status of protection of environmental defenders in very many different places. And maybe to start with a more general overview, I would give the floor first to Ollats from Youth and Environment Europe, who has a testimony on the situation of especially young environmental defenders in Europe. So Ollats, over to you. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Margarita. So yeah, hello, my name's Ollats, and I'm with Youth and Environment Europe. And it's a real honour to be speaking with you today at this side event. So thank you very much for having me. So introduction of the rapid response mechanism by the Special Rapporteur aims to provide immediate relief where environmental defenders are harassed, prosecuted and penalised. This is a non-confrontational, non-judicial and consultative mechanism which fills an important gap because it creates a possibility for the protection of environmental defenders, including children and young people, who are experiencing threats to exercising their democratic rights. It is vital to recognise the importance of this mandate to protect the rights of present and future generations to live in an environment which is adequate to their health and to their well-being. We welcome the UN Special Rapporteur on Environmental Defenders Guidelines on the right to peaceful environmental protest and civil disobedience, which stipulate the establishment and implementation of clear frameworks and measures tailored to the specific rights and needs of children. I'll draw upon the important publications of Be Life report this year and YEE's work empowering environmental defenders through our position paper and pocket guide published last week to scaffold our understanding and ongoing support of the situation of young environmental defenders in the EU. Across Europe, young environmental defenders are consistently united, not only in their tireless enthusiasm and drive for environmental justice, but alarmingly also in their experiences of repression, anxiety, burnout, and legal uncertainty. Over the last 2 years, multiple EU states have been sanctioning and restricting environmental and human rights defenders by using unnecessary and excessive force to break up peaceful demonstrations, including of children and people. For example, the February 2024 position paper by the UN Special Rapporteur on Environmental Defenders on the state of repression of environmental protests and civil disobedience explicitly highlighted the example in Poland where a young female activist was repeatedly asked while cuffed to a police officer whether she was going to be a good girl. This underlines the humiliation, intimidation and violence against notably young environmental defenders. Furthermore, the Be Life report launched this year flagged regional visions by respondents, expressing, for example, that Hungary, France and Croatia exhibited hostile behaviours towards environmental defenders. For example, in Hungary, the sovereignty protection framework, amongst other related measures, have shrunk civil space, enabling preemptive bans and surveillance and prompting EU legal action. And in France, the government pursued dissolution of the environmental collective the Soulèvement de la Terre, and border restrictions around ecological protests condemned as disproportionate by right groups. This is supported by the BeLife report, which referenced the increasing restrictions on protests, strategic lawsuits, and surveillance in France. Therefore, these testimonies, amongst the others which will be shared with us today, begin to knit together a patchwork of a broader picture. A picture which warns of the dangerous repercussions of fraying protection of environmental defenders across the EU and beyond. Deterioration in the mental health of defenders, structured inclusion from decision-making, and limited access to sustainable funding and training are but some of the symptoms of this trust gap between young defenders and institutions. Understandably, this has led to a sense of injustice and frustration, and reiterated the need to content the content of the human rights framework with environmental law. The creation of these grey zones, which is the ambiguous gap between national legislation and implementation, suggests that while progressive frameworks do exist, these legal protections are not always respected in practice. This is a critical gap which we are uniquely positioned to act in and intervene through the rapid response mechanism, and we urge national parties to make the most of this. Ultimately, the courage of young environmental defenders who rise to this challenge of safeguarding all of our futures must be met by all of us at the Aarhus Convention, at this side event and beyond, as we are presented with a powerful opportunity to come together as global leaders of environmental democracy. Young environmental defenders are already doing the work to defend all of us, so we must be sure to continue the momentum to defend all of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Olat. That was a very good overview of the situation for young environmental defenders. Then maybe after that, I would give the floor to Katie de Croo from the United Kingdom, from the Friends of the Earth. United Kingdom, who is going to give an overview of the situation over there.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Katie de Croo. I'm a senior lawyer at Friends of the Earth. We are a grassroots campaigning organisation, and for us, protest is a vital means to advocate for change. But it is being stifled in the UK through the increasing criminalisation of peaceful protests via both criminal offences and through the use of anti-protest civil injunctions. Meanwhile, there is a concerning issue of police aggression towards peaceful activists. The rapporteur's role in highlighting that government practices are inconsistent with obligations under Aarhus is so important. Given the time available, I can only give an overview of the testimonies of activists from the UK, but their statements are set out in full in the printed booklet available here. Firstly, turning to the case of Gay Delap, a Quaker and a 78-year-old grandmother. Gay participated in a peaceful protest on a motorway against new oil and gas licenses. Why did she do this and risk jail in the process? I quote, "Because my heart was breaking for the futures of my grandchildren and all future generations." Gay received originally a 20-month jail sentence for peaceful protest. She was subsequently rearrested and returned to custody purely because the state, in its wisdom, had not found an electronic tag that fitted her. The new anti-protest laws are creating a chilling effect on protest, as per the testimony of Chris Packham, a wildlife TV presenter. And I quote, "It is entirely unclear to me how I can protest without the risk of arrest, conviction, or imprisonment." Turning to state aggression, the statement of Tina Rothery, grandmother and co-founder of the Nanas, an environmental movement comprised mainly of older women. Fracking was forced on the people of Lancashire in England against their will, so the Nanas decided that they had to turn to protest. Tina says that many Nanas were genuinely shocked by police behaviour, from rudeness and ignorance to brutality. Tina witnessed an older woman being shoved into an open lane of traffic by police, and her statement also refers to physical injuries sustained at the hands of the police, including a rotator cuff injury. It seems that the Nana's sacrifice was justified. A moratorium on fracking was established in England in 2019, and that would not have happened without the sustained resistance from communities, groups like the Nanas. But had the new anti-protest laws been in place at the time, then Tina says that many of us Nanas would not have felt able to do what we did back then. On to anti-protest injunctions, the testimony of Michael Salt, a protester against a landfill site which was releasing hazardous gases. Michael was named on an application for an anti-protest injunction. He was advised that he was at risk of £40,000 worth of costs, plus asset seizure if he lost the case. This would have meant losing his home. He suffered, as a result of the proceedings, a breakdown and suicidal thoughts. He was compelled, he felt, to consent to an injunction, limiting where he and others could protest against this site because of the cost risk in continuing to resist it. That is not justice. Ultimately, the Environment Agency closed that site. But would that have happened but for the sacrifices of people like Michael? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. It's very sad to hear those testimonies, but very important. And to continue another testimony coming from the UK, I would give that floor to Talia Wooden, who's next to me.
Hi, my name is Talia, and I am an environmental and social justice organiser from the UK. A lot of the stories that I have to share have a certain kind of element of shock factor to them. I think what I really want to emphasise is the extent to which they're becoming not very shocking because of the context that we have in the UK and the amount of anti-protest legislation that we're being faced with, as Katie has just really helpfully outlined. The specific campaign that I'm referencing to is one of the largest environmental defence campaigns that has in UK history against arguably the most socially and environmentally destructive infrastructure project, the HS2 project. During the time that I was on the campaign beginning in 2020, but others had started protesting earlier in the 2010s, we were very regularly subjected to quite extreme physical violence, with many protesters being hospitalised due to this. Protesters had their lives risked, some were cut down from climbing ropes, dropped into rivers. I saw protesters being choked out to the point of fainting. There was regular sexual harassment, sexual assault of young women. We were regularly arbitrarily arrested to the point, essentially could amount to kidnapping because of the illegitimacy of the supposed crimes that we were committing, that we were being arrested for. People were given increasingly longer prison sentences. Personally, I experienced a number of very violent and enforced strip searches by different police jurisdictions, where I was handcuffed behind my back and held face down on the floor and stripped naked. And this happened to underage protesters as well. So yeah, it was very widespread violence, and it became very normalized and something that we kind of were experiencing day in and day out a lot of the time for those of us that were very involved in this campaign. And I think kind of more than what like the physical and kind of emotional trauma of witnessing this and experiencing this is seeing the impunity that the police and the private security that were hired by the state were able to act under, and the extent to which this violence and repression is being legitimized by the legislation that we're now facing. And, we already, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that the police and criminal justice system are capable of quite extreme violence and repression. But we're now seeing this more and more frequently, even spreading to kind of more widespread protests in, large cities, very much in the eye of the general public and the press. And I think what is really important for me to kind of focus on is the extent to which, the UK really likes to pride itself as being a leader in human rights and, a democracy in which access, our rights and we can freely participate in democracy, and protest being a really important tool that we can use in that. But, those freedoms and those rights are being degraded really rapidly in a really terrifying way. And I think that really kind of calls into question if we can't, freely protest and safely protest in supposedly, one of the kind of safest countries, and where, I think in comparison to the policing protest in a lot of countries, the UK is seen as quite soft. But if we can't kind of freely and safely protest there, is there anywhere in the world where we can? And if there isn't, that really kind of calls into question, the protest of the future of protest, and especially around environmental defence, which I think poses a very, very scary future for all of us, if not current reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Talia. How to move on? We have other statements now, and we have some slides that will be presented. Hopefully, the online participants can see them very shortly. We would start with the testimony coming from Belarus. As you all might know or not, so I will say it. Belarus used to be a party to the Aarhus Convention, but then a few years ago, 3 years ago? 3 years ago, thank you. They left. And environmental NGOs and activists there were already in a tough situation, and the situation became even tougher. That's what we're going to hear now from Belarus, from the NGO Eco Home.
No.
No, it's not Eco Home?
Please don't mention this name of it.
Okay, sorry.
It will be on the fourth slide.
All right.
Why?
All right, I'm so sorry. We will listen to how is life without the Aarhus Convention. What's the situation for activists and NGOs there?
Okay, Margaret, you just make this intro that Belarus was a part of Aarhus Convention, and unfortunately, temporary, not a party, but I guess it will be time that the country will join the convention again. Let us go to the next slide. And one binary party was a famous, well-known country because of its persecution practice to the environmental activists, environmental defenders. So we have mentioned it in two findings of compliance committee. One communication was based on such persecution. And as I mentioned yesterday, that one of most losses of this withdrawal from the convention is that fact that we cannot use the means of Aarhus Convention like compliance committee, special rapporteur. So we cannot now to submit our communication. And okay, next slide, please. Current situation. It's since last 3 maybe years, less, more than 110 environmental NGOs was liquidated by authorities, by courts, and by registration offices, by absolutely formal grounds like Eco Home was liquidated for not providing some information by the Ministry of Justice requirements. So actually, if it would not be such political situation, it never will goes to the liquidation of NGOs, maybe got a warning, a caution. And also authorities use such kind of pressure like temporary detention searches applied to activists exercise their environmental rights. And now, due to information from human rights organizations, there was 1,255 political prisoners, and 8 of them are environmental activists. And due to such situation, people scared to run any activity, especially in public participation in decision making. It's quite difficult to even push people to go to such public hearings, which are officially announced and had to be run. So people scared to go any public meetings and gatherings. And next slide, please. And in addition to liquidation, 2 of NGOs are declared by authorities as extremist formation. So using or sharing any information of their resources will be punished. And for example, yesterday we presented such kind of shadow reports. Well, maybe not shadow reports, but some reports on how it's going with Aarhus Convention in different countries, and one of such reports concerning Belarus was drafted by such organizations. So, for example, sharing link to this report in Belarus will be punished. So, who was downloaded yesterday, please don't show this for Belarusian authorities. And actually, the capacity of such an organization, for example, if I would present this, making this presentation on behalf of one of this extremist organization, it will be a grounds for persecution against me. And due to shutdowning of NGOs, it was quite difficult to provide assistance for people who want to exercise their rights, for example, exercise the rights to access to environmental information, or sometimes people want to participate in some public hearings and looking for any assistance from environmental NGOs, other sources which can provide such assistance. So it's quite difficult to do this, but we still do. And
Yeah, sorry to cut you off. Thank you so much for
the last slide.
Yeah, okay, very shortly.
Yeah. And in September, a group of 52 people's political prisoners were released. And one of released was Dmitry Kuchuk, chair of Belarusian Green Party. So,
Thank you very much for the testimony, and I'm sorry for my
Oh,
the introduction. From my current privileges not being, currently criminalized by any states. I'm sorry about that. Next, we have also slides. The testimony coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have here Patko Filipovic, a member of the Aarhus Center in Bosnia and Herzegovina, who has information about the situation of environmental defenders there regarding to oppression and
Okay, I will be very short.
Thank you.
I hope. So what, next slide. So what is new in Bosnia and Herzegovina? We have some other laws that indirectly affected the work of the activists. For example, in Republika Srpska, there is a criminal code, criminalization of the slander, in addition to slander as a misdemeanor. Then we have a law on special register and publicity of the work of non-profit organization in Republika Srpska. That there are additional restrictions and obligations that are already required by the laws. I must say they are not in use. They just bring it. And we have a law on geological survey in Srpska that the opinion of the local community was excluded. On the other hand, we have some activities of civil sector. We have a team of attorney engaged through the Human Rights House and Center for Environment. We have laws on citizens' initiative and protection of activities. This is referred to the parliamentary procedure in Federation in Croatia. We have a draft anti-SLAPP law in Republika Srpska. It's in drafting phase, and we have on the national level we have a draft law on protection of the human rights defenders of Bosnia. Next slide. The main thing in Bosnia and Herzegovina is SLAPP. It's a method of public intimidation. They are submitted by international companies. We have some cases. The cases of Hairia Chobo, the suitor is Adriatic Metals, is involved in mining of mineral resources. The reason for the lawsuit is the statement that is publicity burned against harmful activities and pointing to favorism of the authorities when terminating of the price of concession in Australian market. The lawsuit is withdrawn, but Hairia didn't give her consent, so the procedure continued. TSO support from Bosnia and the region she had, and the lawsuit are finally dismissed. We have another case of Sunčica and Sara. The suitor is again foreign investor, Green Invest. It's about construction of mini hydropower plant in Kasindolo River. The reason for filing the lawsuit is the statement that the investor delayed caused flooding in the wider area in Sarajevo in November 2021. Sara and Sunisa have support around 104 organizations and partners for all the world. The procedure is going on, but in the meantime, the environmental permits have been cancelled by the permitter issued by the ministry. Next, we have the case of Amila Shabic Ahmetovic. The suitor is Liquid Balkan Metal. Is conducting research on the critical material resources in Jezero municipality. The reason for filing the lawsuit is the statement that she is directly responsible for the decline in the value of the shares of the liquids on the Australian stock market. It's repeating, as you see, and at the end, the lawsuit is withdrawn. Also, we have the case of the Jovan Lekanic. The suitor is police for the blocking the passage of the one firm truck, local firm, to the coal mine. The procedure ended with acquittal. I think that's it.
Thank you so much.
Next slide. No,
It is the next slide.
there is a slide that say thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your thank you. Now we have another testimony, this time coming from Georgia, and we have Salome Shiblatse from the Social Justice Center here with us to talk about the law on foreign agents.
Yes, good morning, everyone. That's me. I also have slides.
Yes, they're coming up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So as you mentioned, I represent organization Social Justice Center, and I would like to focus on the situation that we find ourselves as an organization, but also more general, the situation that environmental defenders in Georgia are facing. At the moment, so first of all, we have been working on environmental rights and the rights of local communities for years. We have been representing them in courts and providing other kind of support. We are trying to continue doing that, but unfortunately, as you know, the situation in Georgia is getting worse and worse every day. Even our bank account, organizational bank accounts are frozen, and we are no longer able to properly function without these resources. This is related to sabotage investigation, which government launched against 10 other CSOs, civil society organizations, but also against politicians, and it's related to the ongoing protests against government in Georgia. So to continue on the environmental protests in Georgia, first of all, I would like to mention that the protests happen in Georgia because communities feel that there is no other way they can influence the decisions of the government. In most cases, even protests are ineffective because government still proceeds with the project, but at least they can do something, and this something is peaceful protest, because again, in yesterday's presentation, I outlined that judiciary completely fails to respond to environmental concerns in Georgia. They take years to schedule even the first hearing, and like from my experience, we had up to 30 cases, and on environmental issues, none of them were satisfied by the court. So no case in environmental issues that we won. And just to highlight, this is not how it works in other types of cases. For example, in labor cases, courts schedule the hearings quite often. So it's not a general problem. This is related to environmental issues and the projects in which there is corporate or governmental interests that projects continue. As for the next slide, I would like to talk about the marginalization tactics that the government uses against environmental defenders. They are, I think, as in other countries, they are often labeled as opponents of any kind of movement. The people who to national interests, especially when it comes to large-scale energy projects. Energy security and generally national interests are very often concepts that are instrumentalized by the government. And even more, this is not just political rhetoric. The report of State Security Service in Georgia outlined that peaceful resistance to one of the large-scale dams, Namakhwani dam, 400 megawatt project, this was the threat to state's national security. And when in 2024 they adopted the law on foreign agents, one of the narratives used by the government was these peaceful protests against energy projects. And what their logic was that CSOs like us, for example, who are funded from Western countries, they are foreign agents undermining Georgia's national interests by supporting populations who are opposing these kinds of constructions of large-scale dams. So this was one of the tactics used by the government. So just to move to another type of persecution of Georgian environmental activists, the dismissal from jobs, it is very common occurrence, and we have many cases of the protest participants from Namakhwani, from Baldatenion, Chiatura. These are all cases of Georgian environmental protests. These people were dismissed, and this dismissal happens not only from governmental jobs but also from private jobs, which is, I think, worth noting. And then there is also state-sponsored private violence against protesters. For example, so this is like small village in Georgia. They had planned the protest next day, and before the protest, they were beaten up on the main avenue in Georgia, Rustaveli Avenue, and this case remains not investigated up until this moment, even though there were cameras, there is footage of this violence. There was a car whose numbers are identified. Still, government has not investigated or identified anyone related to this case. And then, of course, there is this information campaign that governmental media outlets participate very actively. They have some reports on specific activists, and then, of course, they are publicly marginalized, and quite often these people leave the country because of this large-scale disinformation campaign. For example, Tia Godoladze, scientist who was speaking up about the effects of some problematic projects, she was forced to leave the country, unfortunately. And then very briefly about the law enforcement tactics. Now in Georgia, you know that they are adopting the laws that restrict freedom of expression and assembly almost every day. At the moment, the road blockage is punishable if it is repeated offense by criminal legislation. So they a few weeks ago they introduced amendments, and now repeated road blockage is criminal offense punishable by 1 year imprisonment. Also, the tents or shelters during protests are fully prohibited. This picture is from Rustaveli Avenue again, protest before Parliament building. These are people from Shukruti who are protesting the effects of mining industry there. They were just lying there because even in the rain, police was making sure that they could not put up anything. And yes, civil lawsuits and like injunction, company suing the protesters for damages is also the occurrence in Georgia. And the last slides maybe on Giatura case. This is these 4 persons remain in prison at the moment. They face up to 4 to 7 years imprisonment for organizing collective violence. What happened was that in front of the mine, the physical confrontation occurred, and the director of the mine was beaten up. Unfortunately, the article under which they are charged is completely unreasonable, which is the organization of collective violence, which was just protest in front of mine. So unfortunately, next slide, please. this is what they are protesting basically. These very irresponsible practices of mining that causes the houses to be damaged and fully destroyed, and no one compensates locals for their destroyed property. But basically, and this was the subject of their protest. Maybe I'll stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for sharing these experiences from Georgia. Now I would pass the word to our dear colleague Olia from Environment People Law, who is from Ukraine, and we'll be speaking about the protection of environmental defenders in Ukraine, which we all know it's in a very, very horrible situation that's being at war. So there's even added, of course, difficulties to the situation of environmental protection. And Olia, where's yours?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for here so early. The first, I would like to talk about Ukrainian perspective of persecution of environmental defenders in Ukraine. And what I would like to mention, first slide. That now during the full scale of war, we are facing new additional threats. For instance, this night, the western part of Ukraine was heavily attacked. My home place was attacked as well. Some places nearby, civilian objects were attacked, like dwelling houses. So this is actually really terrible, and I think this is for many environmental defenders, human rights defenders, it's really a big challenge to balance the personal safety and to balance the work on protection of the environment. Many environmental defenders were relocated; they lost their homes, moved somewhere. So, and for many of them, the priorities were shifted. So, if your home city is heavily bombed, so you care about the steel plant much less than you are caring for your home and for safety of your family and children. So this is really very hard times for many environmental defenders in Ukraine, and our organization, we lost many clients because of this, because the priority shifted. They were not caring about big plant during this wartime. But situation in Ukraine concerning the harassment of environmental defenders is slightly different, because most of the attack on environmental NGOs, on environmental defenders, are being made by business companies, not by the state. Here I would like to mention two cases, because there are not much time, and these cases are really interesting and worth mentioning, because they also connected to the enforcement and implementation of Aarhus Convention in Ukraine. So one case is against a big NGO located in Vilna, in the western part of Ukraine. This NGO, together with local activists, they were fighting against construction of the wood processing plant by Kronospan company. I think it's a Swiss company with Swiss origins. Next slide, please. There was a procedure of environmental impact assessment, and people provided their comments. Also, this NGO also provided their comments on the environmental impact report, and the company received a positive EIA and started construction. The company constructing the factory, but they filed a couple of slap suits against the local NGO for their comments and which were they put on their website, and also against one local activist. So these were typical lawsuits. They asked compensation for their damage to the reputation of the company, and demanded $30,000 US. So I think it's a huge amount for Ukraine. So this was done mainly to stop to prevent them for taking the company to court, and to talking about the risks of having a wood processing factory in the vicinity with the big city, where there are lots of local dwellers and residential houses. So the company, previous slide please, the company were successful in the court of the first instance, in the court of the second instance with this lawsuit, but then Eco Club NGO, they filed the second appeal to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court took a very positive decision. They dismissed this claim, and they said that this was the right of the NGO, of the members of the public, to express their opinion during the procedure of the EIA. So they didn't provide a false information. This was their comments on the environment impact report. So there were no grounds for this suit. So actually the Supreme Court supported the activists, and it mentioned Aarhus Convention, it mentioned the practice of the European Court of Human Rights. So this was really very positive decision in this case, although the factory is there and working. Another slide, and another case which is ongoing. My organization and a couple of NGOs and local activists in the Carpathian Mountains, we are fighting against a huge plan to construct 300 windmills in Carpathian Mountains, on the top of the Carpathian Mountains. And local journalists, local activists are fighting against this, and there is a lot of debate now. There are slap suits. There are lots of greenwashing NGOs who are clashing with the NGOs who are protecting the environment. We are called to be the representative of the Gazprom, or we are paid by Gazprom because we want to stop the Ukrainian independence in terms of electricity from Russia. So there is now a big debate, but I think that local NGO are very, very strong. We are also providing them some legal help. We are involving some international partners, and we are trying to stop this situation. We also have some court suits against construction of those windmills in the Carpathian Mountains on the territories which are which belong to the Emerald Network. And the local population sometimes is silenced because of the money, because they're employed by the company which is constructing the windmills. But anyway, we really believe that we will be able to protect the Carpathian Mountains from this huge invasion of windmills, because at the moment there is no real big need in this part, in this area for the energy generating facilities. Although we understand that this is quite safe area, that's why investors want to build in the Carpathians, not on the eastern part of Ukraine, which is a not safe zone now. But the members of the public are quite strong, and you hear our voice, and we want to bring this issue, and we hope that we will be able to protect the Carpathian Mountain from this negative development.
Thank you so much, Alia, for that account of the situation in Ukraine. And now we would go to our next speaker from Bankwatch, Polina Veretelnikova, who is going to talk about the situation in Uzbekistan, more especially the silencing of activists. I give you the floor.
Thank you very much for inviting us to speak. You may go to the next slide. Bankwatch monitors development projects of the international financial institutions, and we work in different regions, including in Central Asia, together with our staff. Because international multilateral development banks, their policies are aligned with the Aarhus Convention. They are committed to deliver on transparency and timely disclosure, on public participation, on accountability mechanisms, ensuring this. And that's why even before Uzbekistan has ratified the Aarhus Convention, which happened this year, and we welcomed this step of the country, we as an organization were able to observe how similar principles were already implemented in the countries, whether they are implementable in the countries, because there are certain concerns about this. And you may go to the next slide, please. While monitoring some of the MDB projects, including agribusiness in cotton business, we managed to document quite an amount of severe human rights abuses. This related to the Indorama agro cotton projects, where exploitative practices, unfair labor conditions, land grabs, forced evictions, no compensations, no livelihood restoration plans were offered, also environmental pollution. So the main thing that was observed across this amount of violations was perhaps silencing of defenders, silencing of anyone who tried to speak up. Workers, farmers who were losing lands or forced or made to work during harvest seasons. This practice still exists and still reported by our partners of that Forum for Human Rights. These people who try to speak out, they are being silenced, they're being pressed not to speak. They're being pressed not to speak to environmental defenders, including foreigners, of course. I'll explain why this, it's basically foreign watchdogs like us, like our partners who are able to uncover, to report on such violations outside the country, because inside the country, media is constrained, environmental defenders don't have a very strong voice, and civil society is very weak. It's very oppressed, and quite often there's this tendency of authorities, of security services approaching people who are ready to speak out, approaching monitors who are ready to provide some oversight of development projects, and were kindly warned not to speak, not to kind of damage the reputation of the country or the reputation of the region. It's this traditional kind of attitude. What we see is a lot of people and a lot of environmental activists are obviously working, but working in this self-censorship kind of mode. Very cautious. You can go to the next slide, please, as well. And that's amidst a very rapid development of the country. The commitments that the country announces for development. Yes, progress is announced by the president of the country in the agricultural sector, but also there are very high commitments on renewable sector. And we welcome, especially now that the state ratified the Aarhus Convention, there's some reforms, first steps of reform are already visible. There's a new law on strategic environmental assessment. There's a new development in terms of strategic environmental and social assessment, which has been supported by development banks. And we, because we were advocating for those frameworks, because without them, we already saw in some of the first windmill projects, some substantial harm for biodiversity, for, some concerns were raised in terms of land allocation, because some of the projects were built in a very close proximity or inside the protected areas, and some social issues. But in fact, the only complaint that was submitted to the bank's mechanism was done by us on behalf of the confidentiality, the confidentiality of the local people trying to raise these issues is the only way to do it. And then at the same time, we observe the situation that the people at all do not speak to environmentalist defenders. There's another thing. Similarly to what was told about Georgia, environmental issues are traditionally a very sensitive topic. There's a lack of information, lack of public information. People who are interested in getting some information on environmental issues in the country really struggle to get any. So obviously, if the legislation now is to be aligned with the Aarhus Convention principles, a very solid, comprehensive, accessible public platform for environment disclosure should be in place, and we would expect to see this in the country. But as I said, next slide, please. What Uzbekistan really needs is to open its civic space, make it freer, make it enabling environment for the activists, make sure that grassroots organizations have similar opportunities, because the tendency in the country is to show that statistically there's quite a bit, quite an amount of civil society organizations, yet when you try to check, and monitors did, researchers did, most of these organizations are so-called gongos, so government organized groups that are supported, that are patronized, and are more or less, working in line with the government narrative. Whereas independent organizations struggle to even register. There are reports. For some it takes years. They are reapplying constantly and still unregistered. There's red tape. There's some pressure, as I already mentioned, and the media coverage is very, very low. There are bloggers who can speak, on social media, raising issues, and my colleagues and partners do mention this is being discussed sort of on social media level. But but quite often, if matters of public interest, if matters of environmental issues are raised in a more critical and more radical way, such bloggers are again facing intimidation and harassment. So the society, needs to this open space and needs supports and capacity building. We do, as an organization, provide that, but we do hope that Aarhus Committee also supports this initiative, and perhaps international organizations who are working in the region will be able to support Aarhus capacity building, because people simply need to understand how the Aarhus Convention as a tool works. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paulina. Now we have our last statement. This is from our dear colleague, Magdi Todnagi, who is coming from Good Association from Hungary. So she's going to be speaking about the situation in Hungary.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Guta Association is registered in Hungary, but it is a cross-border and transboundary organization working in more than Central European, Eastern European, EU countries. But I'm going to talk about the Hungarian situation, which is very similar in some sense, and also different from what we heard here from some of you. What we could observe in the last almost 15 years is unfortunate trend of consciously shrinking the civil society space and the space for those who are criticizing or raising voice against government policies regarding the environment, and this or also participate actively in the regular procedures, which could be legal or informal forms of public participation, and express their protest against proposals of new developments which could have hazardous effects or polluting effects, or the operation of such plants which could be also dangerous. And this would say that this state policy has taken the form first of establishing so-called foreign agent type of laws, and later on, it was already mentioned, the so-called Authority for the Sovereignty Protection, which until now didn't have a very serious authority to take actions. It has mainly the authority to express opinions, conduct studies, and make available certain surveys which are spotting environmental defenders, activists, as well as similar similar activists who criticize the government. And this is all planted in the view of damaging the sovereignty of the country. So another maybe next step that we could observe is the proposal of a new law on the transparency of public life this summer, which is still a proposal, but this would give this authority power to take actions against those organizations, not only civil society, but other organizations, including media, which are funded, which have foreign funding, and which so-called could damage the sovereignty of the country. One aspect that could be mentioned also is that the leaders of these organizations would personally be responsible for accepting these foreign funds, and the organizations has to return this fund, but also would have to pay fine, and the leader of the organization in person would be responsible with its properties herself or himself. So we can see, let's say, we can see a growing trend. What, on the other hand, these laws have not been implemented, neither the foreign agent type of law, and this draft law is still hanging and was postponed. The adoption was postponed, but it is, used as a threat, and of course it has a very serious chilling effect. Only one other sentence. So far, the main form of the actions against environmental defenders took the form of intimidation and harassment, some slaps. There have not been serious, let's say, serious physical assault or similar situation. At least we don't know about that. However, this possibility is there every moment. Just to add that we are very happy that the Special Rapporteur is in this function and came to Hungary and had consultation with environmental defenders. So we see that his activity is really useful and can help with advice on the different individual cases. On the other hand, also can help in taking, if even more serious cases happen, then could act and take immediate measures or measures of longer term. And we really support this activity, not only in Hungary, but also for those who turn with any kind of complaint to him. Thank you for that attention.
Thank you very much, Magdi. And that is actually the perfect segue to maybe give the word to Michelle. I know you have to leave in 1 minute, but if you just want to say, well, we are very grateful you are here to listen.
Well, thank you, Margarita, and EB for setting up this panel discussion with you. Thank you also to the Geneva Environment Network for providing the space to invite you to this presentation. The idea was not to respond to statements, communication sent by you and for your presentations. I would love to maybe to receive in writing some of your statements and testimonies, also the slides, if it's possible, to inspire the I just wanted to maybe to introduce the staff supporting the mandate. That's important for you to understand how we work. So we have Teresa, who is a legal officer at the Aarhus Secretariat, and Teresa is the face behind the form of complaints. That is when we send a complaint to the mandate, then immediately she will react to the complaints and reach out to you and to your colleagues, try to set up online meetings with you more in detail. We didn't want to build the bureaucracy, but be friendly, humane, and that's how Teresa is working. That is to get a sense of what's happening elsewhere. And when we know that the situation is serious, then we take the complaints, and she will be drafting the draft communication sent to states. In addition to Teresa, we also have Laetitia Battisti, my advisor, and Cassandra Bussier, working with Laetitia. Laetitia is more in charge of organizing all the consultations, events, travels to countries, and providing also advice to my mandate to support me, help me to find the best way to approach the needs of the defenders. So when you want to invite us or organize something in a country, so that would be Laetitia that would be in charge of a meeting with you guys when you invite us. On the substance, you know that I'm going to present. I present in a couple of minutes a long statement in which I try to reflect your testimonies, what we have heard in all the consultations that we have held in so many countries, not only in the Aarhus region, but also outside of the Aarhus region. And the statement will reflect also a few stories similar to what we have heard today with your statements. I just wanted to insist on the fact that if re-elected, and I do hope to be elected in a couple of days, maybe today or tomorrow, then what we want to do is to continue to consult with you and to travel in the regions. We have been able to travel in 26 countries so far. There are more countries to be visited. Some of them are complicated, so we need your support and your help to be invited there. So if you want to organize something like a workshop, a discussion at the university, that is for me a good occasion to be in the country itself and then to request a meeting with the government to discuss more in detail the situation in the country. So help me in organizing discussions, panels in your countries. That's the best way for you to have me in the country and for me to have the opportunity to discuss more in detail with the government the situations. What we want to do also is to follow up on complaints. We have received more than 100 complaints so far, and we want to follow up to make sure that my work is useful to defenders and to get results. And the best way to get results is to follow up by country visits for the possibility to put the paper on the table and to discuss with the government on the situation and to find a solution for the defense. What I want also to do is to follow up on the guidelines. Many of you have already raised the importance of the guidelines. So now we want to travel to countries as well to organize workshops by which we will invite not only defenders, but also officials from our countries, maybe lawyers, judges, people from the ministries, to discuss how some of the concrete recommendations of the guidelines could be discussed at domestic level, maybe sometimes change the law or adapt the law, or look into how the media would also use the guidelines to support the defenders. And that's something very, very useful for me. We have already been invited in a few countries, but we need more invitations to also organize those workshops. So that would be for us very, very useful. And I will conclude here because the time is very,
of course. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you for coming.
And
Michel is going now to the main meeting because he will be the first speaker, and we will see you back there. But we still have a few minutes here for the rest of us. A good reminder to invite the special rapporteur to your country. It's like a vampire, you can come in without an invitation. So it's good if you can invite to support the mandate. It's really important then to see the reports and the guidelines for the special rapporteur and his team to go and see the situation on the ground, speak to defenders, speak to NGOs who don't always have the chance to come to these international forums. And now we're very close to concluding the event. We have heard definitely common trends, although every country and every situation is very specific. We have heard trends of using the law, using administrative processes, and using police as means of repression and intimidation, and as well sometimes these repressive tactics come also from the private sector. It's mostly in the form of strategic lawsuits against public participation and other forms of threats. We have heard trends of, fear and intimidation being really the main tools to suppress current activities by environmental defenders and NGOs, but also to prevent future engagement in the public space by creating this climate of terror, if I can use that word. We have also heard testimonies of burnout and fatigue, very restrictive means, sort of permissions to carry out activities. And this is this is very concerning and this is not what we want. And it's very good that we have a mechanism for it. It's important that we all keep supporting it. And of course that we all keep exchanging and working together, because it's always very valuable to exchange and know that you are not alone. And there's many other people facing similar situations, and we can learn from each other, of course, and support each other when possible. Maybe then to conclude, we would show a little film that actually we have time to show the 10-minute film. I would also just stress that because this event is so time constrained,
The long one.
we will have a continuation of sort of this exchange later on in the evening at 6 Central European Time. Physically here in the UN in Building S, room 21.
No, room 29.
Oh, room 29, I'm sorry. Spreading fake news. And online with exactly the same link everyone is using now. And now I'm going to shut up and show a very, very powerful film that is only 10 minutes long, made by Not One More, who are also an organization who's working to also bring attention to these cases. And please enjoy. Or, I mean, enjoy is not the right.
I'm Carol. I'm a resident local to the Kirby Misbeaton well site. On the first day of the lorries coming into the KM8 site, there were about 120 maybe local residents that were there. I think I'm not the only person that was there that had been brought up to respect the police, and that, you know, you would go to the police if you had problems, and they were there to help you and to look after you and protect you and support you. And the way in which they were engaging with these mature people and physically handling them was horrifying.
Let's get the chair here. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
My first experience of the police removing me was to be carried face down by two officers, to be dragged, and then somebody to scoop my legs up and to fly me face down in a stress position.
As we filmed, this protester was moved off by police. More followed.
And he takes the arm behind into, I think it's called swan neck.
Get off my arm! You're trying to break her arm. You are getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
And he held me and put his full body weight above my elbow. But I was shouting out in shock and pain and, you know, all the rest of it. And that was my first experience. That was my first encounter with the police.
Moments later, another man who seemed to have fallen in a scuffle was handcuffed and led away.
I've had lots and lots of friends that things have happened to, probably too many to remember, really.
Move out the way then! Keep your hands to yourself!
The ambulance has been called, okay, and they will be on their way. There was an incident last year where there was a woman at the other side of the road, and I just saw them throw her to the ground, and she was very small. I remember thinking it was so over the top because she was such a, you know, nice kind of village lady, and she was just being thrown into the floor. And then there seemed to be a girl who was screaming. They'd pulled her top up and exposed her, and I think this kind of was her first protest, and she seemed quite young, and she was on the floor and she was very distressed, and there were no females around her at that point. It was purely policemen.
You would get some guys that would really push up against you.
She was screaming, is assaulting me, and I could just see that it was using his kind of this area to push her into the fence. They seem to enjoy it. They seem to enjoy it, especially with women, and that's kind of something that you can never get over, that they enjoy it. I'm not saying all the police are like that, but that there are quite a significant number that do.
Women are targeted very often so that they get a response that they can then use against the men.
I was brought up around here from a young child. My partner, when I was at a protest site, Preston New Road, got sexually assaulted by a police officer. It was disgusting.
Don't touch me! Stay there! Stay there! Get off! Stay there! Get off!
You're putting him into a traffic, you
Get off.
How you just
Get off there, Nick. Are you sexually assaulting people? You've just touched my lass's tits.
You grabbed my breast.
Triple
Grab
E.
your bollocks.
No, thank you.
Oh, well, don't grab my
Get off
breast
there.
then. You disgusting sex.
They twisted it.
Oh, God.
Bruised everything. I've seen some of my friends get their arms snapped and stuff like that. It's not nice. And then they re-snap them after they've mended. I've seen that.
We're on Wendover bypass, it's the A413. I was holding up banners on the side of the road and I had my bags on the floor and the police line moved forwards and pushed us back and separated me from the food and the coffees and stuff. I went to pick up my packet of crisps and then I was pinned to the floor by 6 officers.
Why is this happening? Why are you doing this? And they're kneeing him.
I was certainly put down very quickly. I mean, put down like an animal. It did feel like that, you know. You know, it's hard to gauge whether they're responding to you as a citizen or responding to me as like a black male citizen, because I've only experienced their response as a black sort of male citizen.
I'm under arrest to try and have a coffee, am I? Is that it?
There certainly did seem to be discrimination towards people that they perceived as having no value, people who they perceived as being unemployed or maybe not as well educated or articulate, people, you know, people of colour, people of disability, elderly people.
I've seen a guy get chucked out of his wheelchair, and like several times.
Just push the man, he's got paralysed on the floor.
I'm Clive Higgins. This is Rose Hill Farm. We're just outside the village of Steeple Claydon, Buckinghamshire. We've been here since 1983, bought it as an agricultural ruin, and we spent all those years resurrecting it. They've turned up at my doorstep and said, I'm a High Court bailiff and we're here to take your land. I found them cutting a great big hole out of a hedge that I planted, which I did not appreciate. I was told by the bailiff, you're a fucking cripple, why are you here? And he leaned in and smacked me around the side of the head. The last person who did that was probably about 60 years ago, so I'm not used to that sort of. So they really lost their case from that point.
There've been 4 really horrific incidents of violence where young men one had his nose broken up a tree, it was bleeding and broken. Another one had his thumb damaged so badly, the hospital was worried at one point that whether he would lose his thumb. My son was choked out to the point of passing out in a tree. And I was in a tree really near him and I was the main person that saw it. And he thinks that the climber did it deliberately to try and get both of us, to affect us psychologically. And of course I am affected. It is emotionally upsetting to see your son. He thought he was going to die. Really big risks were taken with his life. So, and then more recently we had Badger, whose head was split open by a security guard repeatedly punching him.
Can you get a camera?
Yeah.
This is the assault.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah, one of the security hit me on the head repeatedly. I believe it was this man here.
Have you got his number? What's your number?
What is your number?
No, well, I wasn't bashed up. It was in their vigorous way of moving me out of the road. Yeah.
Order. Oh, public order now. Yes. Irish welfare.
Resist arrest, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Resist arrest is no such charge.
Resist arrest. Where is he resisting?
Just 29% of complainants were talking about vehicles being used as weapons against them, and with intent, that's an imprisonable offence.
You are pushing that man with the machine. You're pushing a man with a machine.
Yet we have video footage of a woman slow walking a lorry and being physically moved down the road by that vehicle, that 44-ton aggregate truck, and the police witnessing it and doing nothing to intervene.
Sort him out.
Fucking prick.
No, I'm not.
Police officer, I need some help! Police officer!
You just witnessed an assault. You just witnessed an assault.
The witness was these enforcement agents doing their job.
But the enforcement agents don't have an eviction order for this field. They can't just be allowed to do anything. Excuse me, sir. There's no eviction order on this field. An assault has just taken place. Will you do something?
Not at the moment.
You've kind of got to question whose side they're on, really, and who they're serving. Because it's not us, is it?
It can scare you a lot away from being on the front line, you know, and that's what they want. But it scared me away for a while. I had to wait months before I went back into it. But I did, because it's important to me. So I just had to get on with it. Sleepless nights.
There is one thing that I just want to add to that. The bottom line is that peaceful protest should never be met with anger, aggression or violence by the authorities. It's wrong. It's simply wrong.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And yes, we'll be making our way back to the meeting of the parties meeting now. Thank you to the online participants. Hope you can hear everything very well. And thank you for joining. And then, you everyone, please come to the event this evening. We'll continue. All right.
Yeah, I'm good. This is what been on tour. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I've done this bit, but I'm just that's what I just sang my Portuguese.